Red Dead Redemption 2 voice actor Roger Clark, who voices Arthur Morgan, blasted Rian Johnson's depiction of Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi. This feels like it's something that should have been done back in 2017, 2018, but it's happening here almost a decade later in 2025. Roll this up over at phantompulse.com. You can find the link in the description below. So, as I said, Roger Clark, he's the voice actor for Arthur Morgan in Red Dead Redemption 2, and he blasted director Rian Johnson's depiction of Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi. He reacted to a post on X from Amir Khan about Johnson's The Last Jedi film. Khan noted that Mark Hamill had made it clear he was not a fan of the way that Johnson was depicting Luke Skywalker in the film, but later claimed that Johnson made a great film. Morgan replied, "There is Luke Skywalker, and then there is Rian Johnson's Luke Skywalker. The latter demonstrably has no basis whatsoever on the former." So pretty harsh criticism right there. And it's true. It's absolutely true. There is no basis whatsoever on Rian Johnson's Luke Skywalker. I've talked about this numerous times in the past. Rian Johnson deliberately went out to deconstruct Luke Skywalker so he could rebuild him up in the image that he wanted to, and completely ignored his entire character arc in the original trilogy. Absolutely despicable handling of Luke Skywalker. He wanted to give Luke the same journey that he already had in the previous 3 films, and he wanted to basically do it himself. And it's just the hubris that he thought he could do it better than George Lucas. But that's what we've seen from a lot of these people in Hollywood. Remember, the Rings of Power people are like, we're writing the book that Tolkien never wrote, despite the fact that they're literally adapting the Silmarillion, which is a book that Tolkien did indeed write and was published posthumously by his son, Christopher. Anyways, Clark went on and responded to an individual who said Rian's is demonstrably better. We're still having these arguments. I mean, it's objectively just not true. That is 100% false. Rian Johnson's depiction of Luke Skywalker is not better at all. But unfortunately, that is the society culture that we live in, where people literally cannot see truth even when it's straight in front of their face anymore. That's just the fact of the matter. It's unfortunate, but that's where we're at. But anyways, Clark responded to this guy saying, "Hey, to each his, her own. I don't hold any hate for The Last Jedi. I actually have learned to appreciate it more with time. It's just Luke I disagree with. That, and it's missing a wicked lightsaber duel." So obviously he knows that he made a huge criticism right here, and kind of backtracking a little bit. I feel like I don't hold any hate for The Last Jedi. I actually have learned to appreciate it more with time. It's just Luke I disagree with. I mean, that's a pretty big portion of the film, and the fact that you're like appreciating it, even though like one of the main characters you think is just absolutely completely wrong, doesn't really make a lot of sense. But anyways, what do you expect? It's a guy who works in the big entertainment industry, right? He then agreed with an individual who asserted that there are only 2 versions of Luke Skywalker that exist, with the one being in Legends and the other being canon. And I guess he considers canon Rian Johnson's version is part of the Luke Skywalker canon, and advised that if you don't like the canon version, then there's plenty of Legends material instead. It's just, if you don't like Rian Johnson's version. And Clark said this is true. So just kind of going back to the original post from Amir Khan about Mark Hamill criticizing Luke Skywalker, especially his characterization and depiction by Rian Johnson. I mean, he did numerous interviews and made numerous statements about how he disagreed with that depiction and just thought that Rian Johnson didn't even understand the character. When asked by a fan why Luke gave up after his failure with Kylo Ren, Hamill responded in a now deleted post, "When I understand, I'll let you know." So like he didn't even understand. I think that was in 2018. So that was a couple months after The Last Jedi had been out in theaters. He did an interview with IGN also in 2018 saying there's just such a huge gap between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens. I had to really contemplate that. I said, hey, how did I go from being the most optimistic, positive character to this cranky, suicidal man who wants people to get off his island? He also questioned Johnson's understanding and knowledge of the Jedi, saying it was a radical change, but I think sometimes being pushed out of your comfort zone is a good thing. Although a part of me said to Rian, but you know, a Jedi would never give up. My concept of the character was that even if I chose the new Hitler, thinking he was the new Hope, yeah, I'd feel terrible, but I wouldn't secret myself on an island and then turn off the Force. 100%. And this was probably one of the most damning interviews that he gave, was this interview with the AP, where he said, my view of the character was that he was the most idealistic character. He was the most optimistic character. And I said that even if I did something ghastly, like picking the wrong student, that I would redouble my efforts. I wouldn't just go off to an island for 30 years, but that's not my job. I have to do what I can do to best realize the vision of the writer, in this case, Rian Johnson. So just absolutely obliterating Rian Johnson's depiction of the character, and when he was actually being honest and truthful about it, before he just completely went off the deep end, and is now kind of, as Amir Khan noted, said that he made an all-time great film, which is just absolutely not true, blatantly false. And in my opinion, it's just Mark Hamill trying to circle the wagons and just kind of just selling himself out, which, I mean, he's not opposed to doing that. We've seen that in the past. But thought this is an interesting story. The fact that we're still talking about this 8 years later is just kind of I think is an indictment on our society and culture, that we can't just agree that this is just a garbage film and the depiction of Luke Skywalker was indeed garbage, because that's what it was. And there really isn't any argument that you can make for that. It is a terrible film, and they did a terrible job of depicting Luke Skywalker. And no matter how far we get away from it, that fact isn't going to change. But let me know what you guys make of what Roger Clark here had to say. Let me know in the comments below. Remember to always be charitable, especially to each other, and to always, always speak the truth.
Why would you be afraid of the people? Why are you not afraid of God instead of man?